Well, welcome. Today, I would like to speak with you in a very short heart workshop. We're going to talk about all things heart, and we'll talk a little bit about food. We'll talk a little bit about the heart chakra. We'll talk about how we can protect this beautiful organ of ours that is so important. I'm going to talk to you about the things that we can do to make sure that we're balanced in this area. There's a lot that we can do. This is probably the most imbalanced organ that I see in women and in others that do frequently give to others and less to themselves. So really important subject. And what's really nice to know is that we can do so much. We can really, really do so much. And it's so important to take care of ourselves throughout our lifespan. And hopefully you will, some of this will really generate a lot of thought and things that you can do immediately. And you'll be motivated to continue doing a lot of these things that I'm going to be talking about. So I'll talk a little bit about what the heart represents to us. It's really, it's the organ of grief, right? It's also the organ of love, of course. We might feel certain things regarding our heart, of course, emotions of all sorts. And a lot of these don't get processed. And the problem with that is that they can wind up in other areas of our body. Certain emotions such as, there's so many different emotions. When we talk about sadness, it's like there's so much different types of sadness. Same thing with anger. When we're angry, there's many different reasons and very many different types. And this workshop is really not addressing all of those emotions, but I just want you to be aware of that and ask yourself when you're feeling something, or even when you're not, when you're, let's say, in alert, in that high stress, emotional tension time. A lot of times we don't feel our bodies, and that's an issue because if we don't feel our body, then we're actually doing things that may harm our body, right? We might not feel like addressing shame or guilt or whatever those are, those things, and end up drinking or eating to not feel those emotions. So it's important to feel these emotions. Okay, so let's talk about the goodness of the heart and what it offers us. We feel things like connection and compassion, puts us in touch with other people. It gives us the ability to act vulnerably, which is a beautiful thing. And I love affirmations. I don't always use them, but with the heart, I really, really love affirmations. And I was talking earlier about giving and receiving. A lot of times we don't receive very much. We do give a lot, but just having that really nice affirmation, I am open to receiving and giving love. So I'm open to receiving and giving love. Okay, so the other thing about the heart chakra is the region, the being of the region in the area of our body is also the breast and the lungs. And so the things that we do for the heart are actually really beneficial for the breast and the lungs. So let's talk about it. So the first thing I'd like to talk about, since we're talking about lifestyle and things that we can do versus eat, I'll talk about the eating in a second, is I really want you to be very conscious of your breath, right? That's one of the first places to check in with your body, right? When we breathe up here and use our shoulders as earrings, we're usually on or in flight or fight, which is a sympathetic nervous system response. It's your sympathetic nervous system is activated for fight or flight. It's running, it's getting out of danger. And your body's really not in danger. You may think you are or feel you are, but you're really not. So how do we do that? So we want to get more in balance in the parasympathetic. And so we want to check in and breathe, right? So check in and make sure that you're inhaling and really feeling the expansion expansion, and then release. And try to make your inhale deep, but make your exhale even deeper. And what I like is a 4, 7, 8 breath. So inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. I'll do this right now to show you. Okay, I'm going to inhale. Now I'm going to hold. And now I'm going to exhale. Okay, so that was a 4, 7, 8 breath. And what I like to do is put one hand on my chest and one hand on my belly. And that way I can make sure that my abdomen is expanding as I do this. It shouldn't be just the chest. The chest should be the last thing to expand. The belly should be the first. So inhale through my belly, then my chest, and then release it. Okay. All right. So that was just a little mini intro to what you can do for your heart. Okay. Breath. First things first, breathe. All right. Let's talk about food quality. Very important. Quality is important, right? Choosing freshest, organic, easy to prepare, right? It doesn't have to be crazy that you have to do 50,000 things to the food to make it taste good, right? If you're getting fresh organic food, we want to let those flavors shine by themselves, right? When we add more stress on our to-do list, we have to do this, we have to do that, then food becomes stressful, and that's not the point. Okay, quantity of food as well. So quantity, we thought quality is important, quantity is important as well. Healthy food is great, but too much healthy food is not, right? It taxes our digestion. And if our digestion's taxed, then our absorption, our utilization of the material that we're eating doesn't get broken down into its constituents to actually benefit the heart, okay? So food quality, food quantity, then what about nutrient balance? When it comes to that, the things that really help the heart are just a balance of beautiful colors, right? We count the colors as our carbohydrates. Our proteins are essential fats from healthy fats from avocados, nuts, seeds, olives, olive oil. And then of course, plenty, like I said, plenty of non-starchy and some starchy vegetables, some whole grains, some legumes, wonderful. But on the top of our list, we really want to just focus on the abundance of color for all the phytochemicals and that virtually assist every organ in our body. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about minerals in just a second that really impact our heart. So we talk about quality, quantity, nutrient balance. Now, what about frequency? Because if we're eating every hour, every couple of hours, our digestion doesn't have a break, right? Also, our insulin levels will stay elevated, and that's not healthy either, right? That can lead to inflammation. When we have inflammation, that can correspond to systemic or overall body inflammation and not be a good thing, right? That can inflame our heart and all the other organs. Okay, so eating right for your heart, you want to try and have fiber with every meal, and that doesn't necessarily mean bran or even eating grains at every meal. It's not necessary, but thinking colors, vegetables, fruits, more vegetables than fruit, right? Beans are wonderful. I love using beans as my starch, right? A bed of lentils, a piece of salmon. If you do grains, quinoa, wild rice, brown rice, millet, those are all wonderful. I prefer non-processed grains more often than I do grains themselves. So I love using chickpea pasta, lentil pasta, but those aren't my go-to grains on a regular basis, right? If I'm going to do grains, maybe quinoa in a small amount, or basmati or wild rice or something like that is great. Really, really great. So you want to think about the balance, overall situation. None of this like bad food, good food, but even eating just what's the best possible choice that I can make on a regular basis. That's more healthy, balanced, stressless, just overall easier way of eating, right? We want to think about easiness or ease of, including all foods in our diet. All right. So minerals, as I said, really, really important for the heart: magnesium, potassium, and vitamins, especially vitamin D, as well as other antioxidants. And plant food is amazing for that. Just eating more colors, you can get all of your beautiful magnesium and potassium, right? Same thing with nuts and seeds. We get magnesium, potassium in things like sweet potatoes and broccoli and bananas and everything. Vitamin D, you're going to get most from things that are animal sources. You will get a vitamin D from certain other things, but usually that's because it does have vitamin D, but not in the absorbable format, right? So vitamin D you'll get in dairy products and ghee, and things like salmon, wild-caught salmon, and so forth. All right, so things you want to kind of avoid, and actually, let me just hold off on that. Let me just add a couple more things. So spices are wonderful for heart health. They're full of benefits and really lower your inflammatory load. I love ginger, turmeric, cinnamon. Cinnamon's wonderful for regulating your blood sugar response. Turmeric is so anti-inflammatory. But if you're grilling or cooking or doing any kind of high heat cooking, herbs and spices are a must. A must. Herbs, even some of the herbs and spices actually have more antioxidants than vegetables. So another thing I love to add on my list is cacao, especially the raw cacao, really rich in magnesium and other antioxidants. I love it in smoothies and parfaits. You want to try and get minimum of about 75% cacao, total cacao. So you'll see the percentage. Or if you get let's say the cacao nibs, that's 100% cacao, right? So there's lots of cocoa chocolate companies out there, but you want to make sure that you're getting about 75%. Otherwise, it's a wee bit too much sugar. So as I was saying, chocolate or cacao is really rich in magnesium. Magnesium is wonderful for lowering your stress. Wonderful. I think the last thing I read is about 75% of our population is deficient in magnesium. So magnesium also helps regulate digestion. It helps promote healthy insulin level. It helps with mood, it helps anxiety, it helps you sleep. Wonderful mineral. One mineral that you do want to be aware of, if you are taking, let's say, a multivitamin, make sure that you're really looking on that list for iron, because if you're, let's say, postmenopausal or a man who is taking in already enough iron, you may have too much iron in your diet, especially if you're doing or eating, let's say, processed foods, even healthier processed foods that may have iron added. Like if you're doing a certain type of almond milk or some sort of cereals, look at the back and make sure that you're not taking in extra iron. Your iron should come from food, right? If you're eating meat, fish, chicken, that's great. The legumes will have some iron, not the absorbable amount or type, but if you are including some sort of animal products, you will get quite a bit of iron. And if you don't need it, it can be kind of risky for your heart and for your vessels. It'll accumulate iron, especially also if you have a rare genetic propensity to store iron. So if you know that that's you, be very, very careful of iron. So things that can interfere with heart health, I would say for sure, it's very, very wise to watch or completely eliminate artificial sweeteners. When I'm talking about here is things like saccharin, NutraSweet, those types of Splenda, and limit those things with fructose. So that would be things like agave. So those you want to limit in both frequency and quantity. And it's really wise to limit your coffee intake, especially if you have elevated homocysteine or even high blood pressure. Those things are very inflammatory. So watch also what you put inside your coffee. Okay. So a lot of my clients have reported that they use, quick creamers and they really don't know what's in those creamers, but 9 times out of 10, they're not the natural ones like the coconut based ones, but they're full of saturated trans fats. And that is not a healthy thing. Okay. All right. So we talked about a few things here. We talked about chakra balance, the heart. I gave you some information about affirmations, about breath work. But one thing that I didn't talk about was a couple more things that I wanted to add before I close off today. And that is the beauty of including sprouts in your diet. Sprouts, especially broccoli sprouts. We talked about how heart health is very similar to, the things that are good for the heart are also good for the breasts. Okay. So broccoli and broccoli sprouts are one of the best items, the rich in sulforaphane for breast tissue and for preventing breast cancer. So there's tons and tons of research out there. You can go ahead and Google that or look at PubMed articles on the value of sprouts. I'm not going to go into the sprouts right now, but you can also sprout your own self. Personally, I used to sprout myself, but now I just buy them. It's just easier for me, but you can get them most places. Make sure that they're not yellowing, that they're super, super fresh. You really, 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 really want to get those sprouts in that are fresh and don't smell, because they can harbor bacteria and not be tasty, and also just not be good for you. Sulfur rich greens. I know you all eat greens, but you want to make sure that you get as many of the greens that are bitter. Okay, so the bitter greens like mustard greens, collard greens, kale, watercress, broccoli rabe. Those are wonderful for detox and for ensuring that your heart is really, really healthy and you're absorbing all that sulfur from the sulforaphane. Okay. You want to make sure that you're slightly cooking, you don't need to overcook, but just slightly. It's actually better to cook slightly than to actually eat them raw, the greens, because you actually absorb that sulforaphane much, much better. If you overcook, then you actually decrease the myrosinase enzymes in there that you need to absorb that sulfur. So there's a chemical process that starts with the isothiocyanates, okay, that are in these greens, and they once you cook them slightly, they get you unlock their sulforaphane. So make sure you know that, and you just cook them slightly. And lastly, I'm going to end with tea. Right? We talk about herbs. Same thing with tea. Tea is an herb, right? And my favorite, I always rave about matcha, but green tea. Matcha is usually shade grown. It just has all that richness and goodness from the chlorophyll and the green. It also has L-theanine that's wonderful for the brain and for calming. If you're super sensitive to the caffeine, it does have a bit of caffeine, but it is so wonderful in that it doesn't give you that shakiness, and it's just a beautiful, I love combining actually matcha and the cacao nibs, and I put it, I like it over ice. I do live in a hot climate, so I like the cooler drinks. It actually refreshes me after a workout. And speaking of workouts, that's another thing we want to do is keep our hearts ticking by doing some sort of intense activity. I prefer doing things like HIIT training, so you get bouts of intense activity versus long, like doing marathons or doing long runs, because that actually is much more aging and uses a lot more of your cortisol that is so precious. In addition to the cardiovascular intense workouts, I do like to do heavy weights. Bar classes are great. Same thing with like Pilates, those are wonderful, but unfortunately, they don't do the heavy weights that you really, really need to prevent bone and muscle loss as you age. So you should have at least, 2 to 3 times a week where you're really working your core, as well as your major muscle groups, chest, back, shoulders, glutes, quads, and hamstrings. And, doing like, a few reps at more of a heavier weight. Be very careful, and you want to really work with a trainer or get some help with the trainer or some sort of video. But yeah, having a nice little weight routine that you do is really good to sort of add on to things like Pilates or your yoga. Those are all wonderful for lengthening and strengthening, but as far as really just preventing bone and muscle loss as we age, we really need more of that. Okay. All right. Well, I hope that helps you. And I am going to put in this workshop a guide. It's a magnesium guide to kind of gauge if you are getting in enough magnesium. And I'm also going to put in another little informational article on heart health. So you've got a little bonus here. And with that, I am going to call it a day and hope you had a wonderful workshop here. And I'd love to hear from you in the chat and see what you learned. All right. Have a great day.